Cops discover truck full of dead bodies. The heat of desperation. It was over 100 degrees when the call came in. A truck parked by an empty Texas road, its doors sealed, no movement inside. When police pried it open, the smell hit first, and what they found would haunt them forever. The first call reached San Antonio PD dispatch at 5:36 p.m., June 27, 2022. A nearby construction worker had heard weak cries, "Ayuda, agua," coming from a parked 18-wheeler trailer on a quiet industrial road near Quintana Road, just south of Interstate 35. At first, he thought it was kids messing around in the heat. But when he got closer, the cries stopped. According to police logs, the worker tried knocking on the trailer's metal walls. No answer. Just the heavy stillness of Texas summer air, baking off the steel. By the time the first patrol car arrived, the asphalt was 153 degrees Fahrenheit, enough to burn skin on contact. Officer Melissa Herrera, the first responder, later told investigators, "I smelled death before I even saw the truck." The white tractor trailer, with fake registration plates, was pulled slightly off the road. Its engine wasn't running. The paint on its side shimmered from the heat, but what drew her attention was the rear door, secured from the outside with a simple chain and padlock. Firefighters arrived minutes later. They snapped the lock with bolt cutters. When the door swung open, a wave of superheated air, reportedly as high as 170 degrees Fahrenheit inside, exploded outward. Then came the silence, followed by chaos. Inside were dozens of bodies, men, women, and children, stacked or slumped over each other, skin blistered, lips cracked, eyes open. Some were alive, barely. Others had already succumbed. EMS teams from across the county were dispatched, converting the roadside into a triage zone. They found 46 people dead at the scene, 16 others were rushed to hospitals in critical condition. It would become, according to DHS officials, the deadliest human smuggling incident in modern U.S. history. Witnesses nearby recalled seeing the truck earlier that afternoon, around 2 p.m., driving northbound with no apparent issues. Investigators later discovered the trailer's cooling system had failed hours earlier, and it had been packed with more than 60 migrants, most from Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. According to federal court filings, the migrants had been loaded near Laredo, roughly 150 miles south, after being transported through a smuggling network operating along the border. They were promised an air-conditioned ride to San Antonio, then transferred to safe houses across Texas. Instead, the air system broke, and the driver allegedly kept going, ignoring cries for help. The driver, later identified in Department of Justice records as Homero Zamorano Jr., 45, from Brownsville, was found hiding in nearby brush, pretending to be one of the survivors. Bodycam footage captured him sweating heavily, disoriented, and muttering, "I was just driving." According to the U.S. Attorney's Office, he had methamphetamine in his system when arrested. Agents also detained Christian Martinez, 28, accused of coordinating communications with the driver. Text messages obtained by Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, showed Martinez warning Zamorano that the trailer's cooling unit had malfunctioned, hours before the tragedy. One message read, "The people are going to die." Another, "They are already complaining." Despite the warnings, the truck continued its route north. Inside the San Antonio Police Department, homicide detectives worked around the clock. They set up a temporary command post in a nearby warehouse, gathering evidence, logging victims' belongings, cell phones, ID cards, small notebooks, and family photos tucked into shoes. Each object told a story. A faded photo of a boy in a school uniform. A folded church pamphlet from Guatemala. A bracelet with the name Rosa. The temperature that day reached 103 degrees Fahrenheit, 39.4 degrees Celsius, and inside that unventilated steel box, heat rose even faster. Autopsy reports later cited hyperthermia and asphyxiation as causes of death. Forensic analysts estimated that within 1 hour, oxygen levels inside had dropped below survivable range. According to FBI incident summaries, the smuggling ring was part of a broader network stretching from Central America to Houston, charging anywhere between $8,000 and $12,000 per person for passage into the United States. Survivors told investigators they were instructed to remain quiet, to avoid attracting Border Patrol attention. "They told us not to move, not to speak. We prayed." One survivor later told Univision News through tears, By the time the truck stopped, many had lost consciousness. Others clawed at the metal walls, leaving scratches that investigators documented in their reports. Inside, condensation mixed with sweat formed puddles on the floor. When rescuers entered, their boots stuck to the metal. San Antonio's mayor called it a horrific human tragedy. President Biden issued a statement the next morning. This incident underscores the need to go after the multi-billion-dollar criminal smuggling industry that preys on migrants. At dawn, local churches opened their doors to families waiting for word. Consulates from Mexico and Guatemala coordinated with U.S. authorities to identify victims. The youngest was 13 years old. The oldest, 55. As daylight spread across the industrial yard, police cordoned off the scene. Drone footage captured a line of white body bags stretching across the dirt, a haunting image that circled global news outlets. Behind them, the trailer stood like a silent witness, rusted, sun-bleached, its doors hanging open. Reporters flooded the area, but investigators kept most details sealed until next of kin were notified. Inside the evidence tent, officers wrote each name carefully on a tag, attaching it to a wrist or ankle. Even the unidentified were labeled with numbers and hope. According to federal indictments unsealed in 2023, both Zamorano and Martinez were charged with transporting undocumented migrants resulting in death, a crime carrying a possible life sentence or death penalty. Court documents detail intercepted calls, GPS data, and financial transactions connecting the suspects to a trafficking route used since 2021. Prosecutors allege the pair worked with cartel-linked operators across the border, coordinating logistics through encrypted messaging apps. Payments were split through money transfer services and couriers in Houston and Monterey. But at the heart of it all, investigators said, was greed, putting profit over human life. In the following weeks, hundreds attended memorials in San Antonio's main plaza. Rows of candles lined the steps of San Fernando Cathedral, each representing a victim. The air smelled of wax and roses. Banners read, "No somos números, we are not numbers." Families flew in from Guatemala City and Veracruz to collect the remains of their loved ones. The Mexican government pledged to assist with repatriation. At funeral services broadcast across Latin America, names were read aloud one by one, followed by moments of silence. Investigators later reconstructed the truck's final route using surveillance footage and highway toll records. At 2:50 p.m., cameras captured the trailer near Encinal, still moving steadily north. By 3:42 p.m., it passed a Border Patrol checkpoint, but the trailer wasn't searched, as the driver claimed to be hauling construction materials. Within 2 hours, everyone inside would be fighting for air. Border Patrol later reviewed footage and confirmed the truck's license plates were fake, registered to a company that didn't exist. The vehicle itself was purchased through a straw buyer, another layer shielding the real financiers. According to Homeland Security investigations, the smuggling network had used similar trucks at least 6 times before, though none resulted in deaths on this scale. The San Antonio case forced federal authorities to launch Operation Joint Eagle, a binational crackdown targeting logistics cells along the Texas border. By July 2022, 4 people had been indicted in connection with the case, including 2 men accused of coordinating safe houses in Laredo. Court filings revealed chilling details. Victims were tracked via coded wristbands to ensure payment. Those who couldn't pay the full amount were allegedly held in stash houses until relatives wired money. The revelations turned public anger toward traffickers who marketed safe passages on social media platforms. Investigators said Facebook and WhatsApp were used to advertise routes and recruit drivers, often U.S. citizens lured by quick cash. One ad, cited in the DOJ complaint, read, "Easy money. Just drive. No risk." In Washington, D.C., lawmakers reignited debates over border policy, calling for tighter coordination between DHS, CBP, and Mexican authorities. But for the families in San Antonio, policy talk meant little. All they wanted were names, answers, and closure. Weeks later, forensic teams completed DNA matches for nearly all victims. Their personal stories began emerging in local newspapers. A father of 3 hoping to reunite with his brother in Houston. A young woman from Guatemala who dreamed of becoming a nurse. A 17-year-old who wanted to send money home to repair his family's roof. Each story turned statistics into human faces. When asked by reporters why the driver didn't stop, one investigator simply said, "Fear." And greed. He knew if he stopped, he'd be caught. So he kept going until the cries went quiet. Those words became the unofficial epitaph of the case. For months after, flowers and crosses marked the site where the truck was found, each bearing a name, a prayer, or a photograph. Truckers passing the area sometimes honked in tribute. Locals called it the Silent Road. But for detectives like Herrera, silence wasn't peace. It was unfinished business. The more she learned about the smuggling web, the recruiters, the drivers, the financiers, the clearer it became, this was no isolated tragedy. It was a symptom of an entire underground economy built on desperation and denial. As night fell on San Antonio, the road where it all happened looked ordinary again. But under the sodium lights, faint chalk outlines remained, marking where paramedics once worked in panic, where hope gasped for air inside a sealed box of steel. And in that unbearable quiet, one truth echoed louder than sirens. No one sets out to die chasing a dream. The weight of justice. The night after the discovery, San Antonio Police Headquarters didn't sleep. Detectives, agents, and forensic technicians flooded the evidence lab, clothes laid out, fingerprints lifted from the trailer walls, cell phone data downloaded from every recovered device. The press called it the truck of death. But inside the precinct, officers called it something else, the lesson. They knew this case would define their careers. And for some, it would break them. The federal storm. By dawn, Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, and the FBI had taken over. The case crossed multiple jurisdictions: border enforcement, interstate trafficking, immigration, and homicide. Within 24 hours, it had escalated to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Texas. Federal prosecutors issued a joint statement. This is not just a tragedy. It is organized crime at its deadliest. Agents began reconstructing every mile of the truck's path using satellite pings and toll data. From Laredo to Encinal, from Cotulla to San Antonio. Every rest stop, camera, and checkpoint became part of a digital map. The GPS from the tractor's onboard system, recovered by technicians, showed something chilling. The driver had stopped twice during the trip. Both times, for less than 5 minutes. Both times, without opening the trailer doors. According to court filings later unsealed, those stops coincided with 2 phone calls to a contact saved as C. Mart. Prosecutors alleged that was Christian Martinez, the alleged coordinator. The calls lasted less than 30 seconds each, short enough to give orders, long enough to decide fates. The survivors' voices. In the hospital ward at Methodist Metropolitan, 11 survivors clung to life. Doctors treated dehydration, heat stroke, and organ failure. Agents arrived quietly, avoiding cameras, to take statements as soon as patients could speak. A 20-year-old from Guatemala, identified only as Rafael for safety, described the moment oxygen ran out. It felt like the air was melting. People were screaming for help, banging on the walls. Then it got quiet. Another survivor, a Honduran mother who lost her teenage son in the trailer, told ABC News through an interpreter. "We thought America would mean life. Instead, it became a coffin." Their testimonies became the spine of the federal indictment, proof that the tragedy wasn't an accident, but a foreseeable consequence of greed and negligence. Following the money. Investigators soon traced a web of deposits. $10,000 here, $7,800 there, transferred through remittance apps and cash drops in Houston. The funds originated from families across Guatemala, Honduras, and Mexico, each paying traffickers to deliver loved ones safely. According to HSI financial crime analysts, the operation earned nearly $250,000 on that single load. The profit margin on human lives was obscene, and precisely why the network kept running despite previous arrests. Agents uncovered WhatsApp messages between recruiters in Nuevo Laredo and handlers in Texas, advertising climate-controlled transport and guaranteed arrival. When asked later how those messages escaped scrutiny, one agent sighed. They blended in with the noise. Everyone's selling something online. Inside the courtroom. By July 2023, the federal courthouse in downtown San Antonio became the stage for a story the world could hardly believe. Zamorano sat at the defense table, expression blank. Across the room, the prosecution displayed enlarged photos of the truck, its walls scarred with handprints, its floor stained. Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Day opened her argument with a line that silenced the room. These were not invisible people. They had names, families, dreams. And they were left to die in a box. Defense lawyers argued that the driver was a pawn, manipulated by higher-level traffickers who remained unnamed. But prosecutors countered with data, texts, calls, GPS records, all leading back to him. According to trial transcripts, Zamorano admitted knowing people were inside but claimed he didn't realize the air system had failed. When the autopsy photos were shown, several jurors turned away. Unseen hands. As the case grew, federal agents extended their reach beyond Texas. In Monterrey and Reynosa, Mexican authorities arrested 4 suspected recruiters connected to the same pipeline. Each arrest revealed a repeating formula: smugglers charged families thousands, paid drivers a fraction, and pocketed the rest through layered intermediaries. The US and Mexico launched a joint initiative, Operation Joint Eagle, aimed at dismantling the networks, not just punishing drivers. Within months, 35 people were indicted across both borders. But officials admitted privately that for every smuggling cell taken down, another rose to replace it. The business survives because desperation never runs out, said one DHS official, speaking anonymously to Reuters. The city's mourning. In San Antonio, murals began appearing, faces of the victims painted on brick walls with the words, Dios los reciba. Local churches held monthly vigils. Every June 27th, candles line Quintana Road where the truck was found. The site has become a memorial. Truckers still slow down there. Some leave bottled water on the shoulder, small gestures against the memory of thirst. Detective Herrera, now promoted to lieutenant, still visits the spot once a month. It reminds me why we were the badge, she said in an interview. To stop this from happening again, even if we never can completely. Global shockwaves. Internationally, the tragedy reshaped conversations about migration policy. European outlets compared it to their own smuggling disasters in Austria, 2015, and Essex, UK, 2019, when migrants were found dead in sealed trucks. Editorials in The Guardian and Der Spiegel called the Texas case a mirror of Western hypocrisy, borders fortified, yet smugglers thriving. The United Nations International Organization for Migration, IOM, released a report citing the San Antonio event as evidence that global migration routes had grown more lethal than ever. When legal doors close, people crawl through the cracks, and those cracks kill. The report warned. The family's long road. Back in Latin America, families faced another kind of trial, bureaucracy. Repatriating the bodies required identification, DNA matches, and paperwork through 3 governments. Some waited months to bring loved ones home. Others never received confirmation at all. In Veracruz, one father told BBC News he recognized his son only by a tattoo. They told us he'd send money soon. Instead, they sent his body. The grief spread across villages like an invisible epidemic, one defined by silence and empty chairs. The verdict. In August 2024, after weeks of testimony, the jury found Homero Zamorano Jr. and Christian Martinez guilty on all counts. Transporting migrants resulting in death, conspiracy, and aiding and abetting. During sentencing, the judge's voice echoed through the courtroom. 46 souls paid for your decisions. Their silence will be your life sentence. Both men received life imprisonment without parole in federal custody. The courtroom fell quiet, except for muffled sobs from the victims' families. Outside, cameras captured their reactions, not celebration, but weary relief. Justice, they said, could never balance the scale. Lessons in ashes. Months after the verdict, investigators finally released the truck to a scrapyard outside Austin. Before it was dismantled, advocacy groups held one last memorial. Inside the rusting trailer, they installed plaques etched with victims' initials. Then they sealed it shut forever. Reporters asked why not display it in a museum. A volunteer answered simply, because this is not history. It's still happening. Indeed, within a year, another smuggling truck was discovered near Uvalde, carrying dozens more. That time, agents intervened in time. Lives were saved, but only barely. The investigators' reflection. Lieutenant Herrera's final report included a personal note rarely seen in official files. There are crimes you solve and crimes you survive. This was both. The law punished 2 men. But the truth is bigger: poverty, hope, borders, and the human need to move. Until those are judged, the verdict is temporary. Her words later circulated online, quoted by advocacy groups and law schools alike. The San Antonio case became a teaching module for human rights courses worldwide. It forced policymakers to face an uncomfortable reality: border security alone cannot stop human desperation, it only changes its route. On the first anniversary, families gathered again under a scorching Texas sky. The same heat, the same road, but now surrounded by candles and flowers instead of sirens. They prayed in Spanish and English, holding hands with police officers who once zipped the body bags. As the sun dipped below the horizon, one survivor, Rafael, spoke softly to the crowd. "I lived. But part of me stayed in that truck. May the world never forget them." The crowd repeated his words in unison, a chant rising into the hot air. For a moment, the hum of nearby traffic faded, replaced by silence, the kind that carries meaning, not fear. And in that silence, the ghosts of Quintana Road finally rested. Based on verified facts from DOJ indictments, DHS statements, and public trial records,